Welcome to the Hyperpolyglot Activist, Learn Languages, Make a Difference. My name is Dr. Carlos Yebra Lopez, and today we're going to talk about how to learn any language on the internet in just 6 simple steps. Now, the problem with many people is that they focus exclusively on just one online language learning resource. So take, for instance, one of the most well-known ones, Duolingo. Then they say, okay, so Duolingo doesn't really work because I tried to learn Russian on Duolingo for 3 months and I could only say so many words. Well, of course, it didn't work because that's not how language learning works. You cannot just be dependent on one resource. Just like in your diet, you wouldn't depend on just one type of food, regardless of how healthy that food is. It would be pointless to say, I heard protein shakes are effective, but they don't really work because I've been eating exclusively protein shakes for the last 3 months and I'm not in shape. Well, of course you aren't, because a diet is much more complex than just a single type of food. Does that make sense? So what is the right all-encompassing method? For a decade, I have been experimenting, trying things out, failing so you don't have to. And I've come up with a method that always works in a short amount of time. Now, you could always say, well, look, Carlos, every learner is different. Just because it works for you, it doesn't mean it works for me. And I'm going to counter that argument by saying that yes, everybody is different, but at the same time, there is something common to every successful method. So, for instance, when you go to the gym, every person has a different physique. Does that mean that we shouldn't come up with a general method that works for everybody? I think everybody agrees that we need to hit the gym consistently, that we need to work out not just the upper body, but also the legs, etc., etc. So there are different elements that are common to all successful methods. The same goes for online language learning. Every learner is different, yet there are elements that are common to every successful online language learning process. And these are the 6 elements. First, an online course. Second, a relevant dictionary. Third, a spaced repetition system. Fourth, a cheat sheet. Fifth, social interaction. And finally, a personal online diary. Let's break them down. Number 1, an online course. Now, of course, there are different options, but the ones I'm going to suggest are all online language learning courses that can also be downloaded as an app. These are Duolingo, Busuu, Babbel, and Utalk. Now, Duolingo is probably the most well-known. What I dislike about Duolingo is the fact that it places too much emphasis on having fun, and as a result, oftentimes it presents us with sentences that we will never be able to use in real life, such as, the blue elephant is rolling on carrots. This sentence is completely useless. Somebody working at Duolingo might think that this sentence will make your day, but still, from a language learning perspective, it's pretty useless. That being said, Duolingo is a great, very useful app, so long as you use it in conjunction with. The second one will be Busuu, which is based in Spain and is pretty similar to Duolingo. Perhaps the most unique aspect of Busuu vis-a-vis Duolingo is that on Busuu, you can write composition and have it proofread by people whose first language is your target language. So if you're learning German, you can write a composition in German and it will be reviewed and revised by people whose first language is German. And that is pretty amazing and pretty useful, to be honest. Now, a third alternative is Babbel. I know it's very well known. I haven't used it personally, but I have included it in this list because functionally it is equivalent to Busuu and Duolingo, meaning whatever you can do on Duolingo and Busuu, you can also do it for the most part through Babbel. And the last one I would include is Utalk. Perhaps this is lesser known. It's a company based in the UK with which I collaborated back in the day to create a course on Ladino or Judeo-Spanish, the language spoken by the Jews who were expelled from the Iberian Peninsula at the end of the 15th century. And I have included it in the list because it's particularly interesting and useful if you're learning a minoritized language as opposed to a mainstream language. So for instance, if you're learning Mandarin, maybe you want to use Duolingo or Busuu or Babel. But if you're learning Shanghainese, which is a much more scarce dialect spoken in China, you cannot find this linguistic variety on Duolingo, Busuu, or Babel. So you will need to go to UTalk and learn it there. And as you can see, it has more than 140 languages. These are the mainstream ones, yes, but you also have way more specialized languages such as Assamese or Bemba or Cebuano or Chichewa. These languages are very, very hard to find in any other platform. So UTalk does a great work at offering them. An additional advantage is that on UTalk, you don't have just a one-to-one correspondence between languages, as in Duolingo. So in Duolingo, if you want to learn Spanish, you only have a limited set of combinations of languages from which you can learn Spanish. For instance, Spanish to English, Spanish to French, Spanish to German, but let's say not Spanish to Swedish. Here, this is not a problem because at UTalk, the corpus that they use is the same for every single language. So once you have a course for, say, Filipino, Tagalog, you can learn that very language, Tagalog, from any other language in this platform. So you can learn Tagalog from Afrikaans. You can learn Tagalog from Tibetan, Italian, German, from any other language on UTalk. Second step, create a relevant dictionary text document. You can just open a Microsoft Word document, go on Google Drive, but the point is that you open a new document and you include in that new document only the words that you learned in the previous online course app that are relevant to your learning experience. So for instance, if you never talk about dance and you don't care about dance, it will be useless for you to include a lot of specialized vocabulary on this area, even if that vocabulary was presented to you when you were taking your language learning course on, say, Duolingo or Babel or Busuu or UTalk. Now, once you have that vocabulary and those sentences in your Microsoft Word or Google Docs document, you take those entries, you import them into a spaced repetition system, or SRS for short. What is an SRS or spaced repetition system? It's simply a software with a built-in algorithm that allows you to practice the most those words that you struggle to remember the most. And so if you practice a word, but you're really good at recalling it in a very short amount of time, that word will not be shown to you often on this app, and vice versa. If you are having a hard time remembering a word so that when it is presented to you, you cannot possibly get the translation right, the software will keep showing that word to you again and again and again until you get it right. And so that way you don't even have to think about, okay, what are the words that I cannot remember? What are those words that I don't need to practice? The algorithm does all that heavy lifting for you. The spaced repetition system that I use is, as you can see on the screen, Memrise. And so you just log in with your Facebook account or your Google account. And what Memrise allows you to do is both to take courses that already exist and courses that you would like to begin. So you can create your own course from scratch. And that's what I'm suggesting. Rather than following a course that somebody else created, start from scratch, create your own course, and import in that course the vocabulary and the sentences that you have in your relevant dictionary document. That way you can practice them dynamically as a game, and it's a smart way of going about it because thanks to the algorithm, you'll practice the most those words that you need to practice the most, and the list, those words that you need to practice the least. The fourth element is a portable cheat sheet, and there you can write greetings, for instance, ways of introducing yourself and asking basic information from others. My name is such and such, I live in such and such, how are you, etc. Vocabulary and structures related to your job, to your hobbies, to the things that are relevant to you. And then perhaps some funny sentences and idioms to break the ice and or to make the conversation more interesting, more dynamic. The reason why you want to have a cheat sheet is because it facilitates the process of activating your vocabulary for social purposes. There is so much information that you've come across while learning a language that your brain tends to struggle to filter the information that is immediately relevant for social purposes. However, when you have a cheat sheet that you can look at every time you're about to enter a social interaction, you are constantly reminding your brain of that vocabulary and the structures that are mostly relevant for the purpose of that interaction. So you don't need to. So again, you're saving yourself the hassle, the heavy lifting of having to think and work out what words from all of the vocabulary and grammar structures you learned are going to be relevant in that situation. Number 5, engage in social interaction. Again, you can have the cheat sheet, but if you never get to use that vocabulary or those grammar structures, then it's useless. The whole purpose of designing the cheat sheet is to put yourself out there and use those structures with a fellow human being. Now, there are a number of apps that you can use for the purpose of social interaction. My favorite one, especially if you cannot have physical interaction, if you are isolated and you have to resort to the internet, then by all means use italki. Italki allows you to find teachers and peers to talk to, and it also allows you to earn money as a teacher yourself. Now, in this case, I recommend italki as a student. I think that as a teacher, italki is kind of like Uber, which is great for consumers, but it's kind of precarious for workers. So the same applies to italki. You have great prices and great discounts for consumers, but at the same time, even though teachers have a lot of flexibility, the payment is hardly good. They really need to put a lot of hours in to get a significant salary out of italki. So it's something that people do on a part-time basis to get extra money, just like Uber. But it wouldn't be enough as a full-time job. And so in italki, you can book lessons whenever you fancy and the teacher is available. You have 100% guarantee on your money. You can cancel classes very easily. And so it's really a great way of learning languages online. Now, of course, it costs money. So even though the classes are not super expensive, that cost adds up. So I would recommend using italki once per week, no more than once per week, unless you have a lot of money and can afford to do that more times. Additional apps that you can use that do not cost money are, for instance, Tandem. Tandem is a great way to practice languages with other people. It functions just like WhatsApp or just like any instant message app. And the only difference is that now you're communicating in your target language. And finally, I would like to recommend yet another app that is functionally equivalent to Tandem. And so even though I haven't used it myself, I believe that it could serve a similar purpose. It's called HelloTalk. So HelloTalk is over here. As you can see, it's very resembling of Tandem, and you essentially learn languages by chatting, just like on Tandem. Now, surely you can say, if I need to pay for italki and Tandem or HelloTalk are for free, why would I use italki at all? And the answer is very clear. Because you pay money on italki, teachers and instructors are going to be all the more motivated and incentivized to make sure that you actually learn the language and keep coming to the classes. However, on Tandem or HelloTalk or a WhatsApp group or a Facebook conversation group or a Zoom group, people are not going to have the same kind of incentive. They are going to care less, be more flaky, offer less quality, all of this because they don't have that money incentive. So again, don't be cheap when it comes to learning languages, or better yet, be realistic. Assume that if you cannot afford to hire somebody, then accept that you cannot expect that person to act as your teacher, because he or she is not. And the last element is a diary. So you want to have an online target language diary. And here you're going to write anything between 5 sentences and 1 page. I feel like less than 5 sentences is not enough practice, whereas more than 1 page will take you too much time. Here you can write about your personal experiences, your goals, your ambitions, people you hate, whatever. The point is not so much the content, the point is to get to write in your target language. Of course, if you happen to be practicing the vocabulary and the grammar structures that you just learned, that's going to be even better. If on top of that, you have someone that you can ask to review what you wrote and whether what you wrote is correct or not, that will also help, of course. So there you go. These are all the 6 elements that you need to learn a language online. Selecting an online course app, creating a relevant dictionary document, selecting a spaced repetition system, creating a cheat sheet that you can carry everywhere, engaging in social interactions, either on italki or Tandem/HelloTalk. Finally, create an online diary in your target language. Now, there is one more element, which is frequency. How often do you engage in all of these elements? Well, my suggestion is that you follow a rule explained by Alex Rawlings in his How to Learn Any Language, which is a 15-30-15 rule, meaning practicing your target language 15 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon, and 15 in the evening. Now, how many days per week? Well, it depends on how fast you want to learn the language. Now, based on my experience, my educated guess is that if you're slowly learning the language, you use this system 3 days a week. If you want to learn it at a medium speed, use this system 5 days a week. And if you want to learn the language as fast as possible, devote the 15 minutes structure to learning your target language 7 days a week. Now, of course, you can choose to use one resource or another during these 15 minute breaks. What you cannot do is just use a single resource every time. So try to mix them. Try to use, for instance, in the morning, those 15 minutes you use Duolingo, but then during the 30 minutes in the afternoon, you include the words that are relevant to you in that relevant dictionary and then include them in the spaced repetition system. And in those 15 minutes in the evening, you practice that language. So that's all from me. Get to use this method. Let me know if it works for you. And as always, thanks for watching.